and welcome everybody to today's session on leading highly effective one-to-ones. Today our focus will be on building meaningful relationships through one-to-ones, and the session is going to be very interactive, so be prepared. And we're going to start off with that interaction right now by asking you a poll question. And that question is, how often do you currently have one-to-ones with your team? So do you have them weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or never? Now I invite you, please be honest, don't be shy. If you're there going never, then put it out there. We would love to see what people say. So how often do you have one-to-ones with your team? We've got 82% weekly, 18% bi-weekly at the moment. Fantastic. Okay, so why do you think one-to-ones are important? What do you use them for? Why do they matter? Pop in the chat as well. Let's keep this interaction going. So why do you think they're important? Why do they matter? For me, I think one-to-ones matter because they're an opportunity to build relationships, an opportunity to build trust, to understand what's going on, to help people, to get feedback. So to stay connected to my reports. Nice. Keep them coming. Why do you think one-to-ones are important? And we've got here to stay connected to the team, to build trust, to keep on top of things, and to have a space to discuss things outside of the day-to-day. I love that, and we're going to be building on that later on. So let me share with you a little bit about me and my background and why I'm here today talking to you about how to have and why it's important to have effective one-to-ones. So my name is Tara Rule. I have built a career over the last 20 plus years, working in a mix of small companies where there's been just 30 people, all the way up to huge global organisations where there's been 25,000 people. So I've worked in different size organisations and I've led different size teams throughout that time. However, the thing that I have loved most is leading, coaching, helping people. I actually left corporate life a year ago to help managers like you to build a better culture in your companies as well. I think that the thing that's key that's really stood my leadership apart from others is that I've prioritised building relationships, and that only comes through having effective one-to-ones. So that's why we are spending this time today talking on such an important topic. Okay, so what are we going to get out of today? So at Junto, we believe that having regular employee-centric and employee-driven one-to-ones are critical. They're critical to drive trust, to build relationships, and they are the foundation of having an effective team. So there are 3 things that you will have by the end of this session. Firstly, you will be able to implement consistent and impactful one-to-ones that empower your direct reports. But more importantly, we're going to be able to do it without increasing your workload, which is fabulous. Give me a +1 if you want more things that can help you without increasing your workload. Give me a +1 in the chat if you're like, yes, I'd love more of that. Brilliant, I've got yes pleases and +1s, +100, fabulous. Secondly, we are going to be able to practice active listening skills. So we listen all the time, but how much do you actually actively listen? And actually a massive chunk of today's session is going to be role playing. It's going to be role playing and practicing active listening. And the third thing that we're going to provide for you is a template so that you can have effective one-to-ones, but also knowing that one size doesn't fit all. So you'll be able to have a template that you can adapt to you and your team and your style. So that is the purpose for today. Give me another +1 in the chat if you are ready to get going, and I will share a little bit more about why one-to-ones are important. Fabulous, love that. I've got a +100, nice. When I asked earlier about why one-to-ones are important, there was an element around building trust, building relationships, being close to people. And actually I would say building kind of the foundation of leadership is really critical to do that through one-to-one conversations. It's an opportunity to promote psychological safety and trust, to show your direct reports that you're there to listen, being happy to be vulnerable with each other. Actually, vulnerability is a massive, massive strength that not every manager portrays. But also, one-to-ones are the scaffolding for great leadership. So you can coach them, you can support your team, you can encourage the growth of your employees. You're able to do that all within one-to-ones. They are an opportunity for you to set business goals, to give feedback and to monitor, but note that the word monitor is last. One-to-ones are not there to monitor day to day exactly what everyone's doing. They are so much more than that. One-to-ones are first and foremost about building relationships, not about just status updates. And although status updates sometimes are needed in order for you to really get to the bottom of what's going on, actually making sure that these one-to-ones are employee-led rather than led by you will mean that you'll have so much more powerful and interactive one-to-ones with your team. So we are going to be providing with you today a one-to-one agenda, and the one-to-one agenda is made up of 4 areas. Firstly, checking in on wellness, seeing how they're feeling, asking them what's going well and what's not going so well, and spending some time really kind of understanding your employee. Secondly, it's about reviewing progress. What's happening right now? What happened last week? What are your focus areas for this week? It's an opportunity to as well deep dive on obstacles. So being able to talk about the challenges that they're facing and understanding how you can support them. And I think one of the key things here that we'll get to more with the active listening is not jumping to conclusions about how you can help them, but properly having a conversation so you can help them in the best way possible. And lastly, recognition and feedback. It's an opportunity to give each other both positive and constructive feedback so that there are no big surprises at annual review time. So I'm going to ask you in the chat now, give me a 1, 2, 3, 4 to go, which do you spend most of your time in one-to-ones on? So give me a 1 for wellness, a 2 for progress, 3 for obstacles, and 4 for feedback. Where do you spend most of your time at the moment? Okay, so we've got a real mix. We've got 3, 2 and 3, 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 1, 2, 1. Okay, so we've got a real mix. Did anybody say feedback? Okay, we had 1 person with feedback. So I'd love to invite you to come off mute. Christopher, I'd love you to come off mute for a moment because I'd love to hear why you think feedback is important, because it's not something that everybody does. So Christopher, if you're happy to come off mute, I would love you to share for a moment. Why do you think it's important?
Yes, I think it's like important to just give somebody a little bit of like a reflection or like another perspective on how they act in their day-to-day and in their interactions professionally, or like also other things that you just observe. I think
Nice.
feedback is not necessarily something of like you did this good or bad. It's more like, hey, I observed this, and you have the freedom to decide how you react on that. But just give those observations on like a regular basis. That's what I would see as
Fabulous.
feedback.
Nice. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Fabulous. So in this agenda, there's a template for you to have a look at the moment. But really the one-to-one agenda is how we recommend you run one-to-ones effectively so that you build trust, so that you build that psychological safety. Quite a few of you said you have your one-to-ones weekly, which is what we at Junto recommend as well. Obviously, one size doesn't necessarily fit all, but we find weekly one-to-ones are really effective and having them as 30 minutes. But the key thing here, because I promised you earlier that I wasn't going to be giving you more work to do, once you have built the template, this agenda, so that it fits for you, and we'll have that opportunity later in the session to flex this agenda a little bit. Then it's about you sharing it with your teams so that they complete it beforehand and send over to you. Okay, fabulous. So I'm going to ask for a little bit of a discussion. Any questions that you've got, anything that's immediately coming up before we get into a bit more of the how and before we get into the role playing? Are there any questions that anybody would love to ask, either about what you've heard already or just any burning questions that you've got?
Maybe one question, Tara. Would you say that this template is working independent of the department that you're working in?
So is it independent of the department? So ideally, if this is something could be rolled out across the whole company, then I think that's brilliant, so that the whole department is using something. But I think it's around finding something that works for you as a manager and flexing it slightly to be what are the questions, what are the topics that are really relevant to you and your team and those that work kind of in your team. I've led a team of 30 before, and the way I manage kind of my direct reports might be slightly different about how my direct reports manage their teams. But having some consistency, I think, really helps overall teams to be moving forward and pulling in the same direction. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Liam, you've got your hand up.
How do you handle the conversation if they come to you saying, you know, we're already super busy and now I have this other document to fill out? Like, have you had people actually pushing back on having to fill out this kind of more structured document than just a Google Doc?
Yeah, I think there's something around helping them understand why. So why it's important. So if you just send this out to everybody and go, hey, everyone needs to fill this in, you might get resistance. So I think when you introduce it, it's probably worth having a conversation with people and explaining why you're doing it, what you're trying to achieve. And I'd say as well, if this is something new that you've never tried before, after a couple of weeks, get feedback and how's this working for you? And I think there's also the element of, if they are spending the time to create it, read it. Don't jump on the call going, oh, hang on a second, let me find it. Where did you send it? Did you send it yesterday? Okay, let me open it up. Let me read through it. Then people go, okay, why have I bothered? So I think it's showing them that respect as well that builds trust. Okay, so we have covered some of the what, but now let's dig into the how. So as I said earlier, you're going to have some time to practice. But first off, we're going to talk a little bit about how to practice active listening, and then how best to actually run the session. So I'm going to share with you in a little bit about what active listening is and what it isn't. And the personal example I've got is my daughter. She's 13 years old and she plays the piano. And sometimes she'll go to me, she'll play on the piano. She'll go, Mum, are you listening to me? And I'll go, yes, I'm listening. And I'm there washing up on my phone, reading a book. I'm doing stuff, but I'm also listening. But she goes, no, Mum, are you actually listening? And she really likes it when I stop what I'm doing. I walk into the same room as her and I listen to her playing the piano, because there is a difference between listening and somebody feeling heard. So I don't know, give me a +1 if this resonates with you in the chat about there being a difference between listening and really, really listening and somebody feeling heard. Yeah, got lots of agreements here for sure. Okay, so let me share with you the 4 steps that you can take so that you can really actively listen. And my invitation to you when you are having your one-to-ones is treat it as a sacred space. I'd say before you even get into the proper active listening, put your phone away, put your email away, switch things off so that you see this time as that sacred time with your one-to-one to build relationships, to build trust, to understand what they're going through, to understand how they are as a person, to get to know them on a slightly deeper level. So I think that's just kind of status to go, right, how can you get some of those basics that you are ready to active listen? And then these are the 4 things that you can do while you are active listening to really show that you are active listening. So the first one is to paraphrase and to reflect back. And I'd love you, as I'm talking, put in the chat to go, for each of these, is this something that you do often, not very often, sometimes, never? So I'd just love to get a bit of a feel about, is this something you're using a lot or not? So when you paraphrase and when you reflect back, you're showing that you're paying attention. You're listening to what they're saying about their goals, their problems, their needs. You're taking time to actually reflect back to them, and it's a really powerful tool. People feel more listened to, more heard when you use their own language back to them. And it sounds like this. It sounds like saying, hey, I'm hearing that you're saying that being part of this meeting is really important for you. So you're kind of paraphrasing back what they've said. And with clarifying, it's about asking questions. So making sure that you've heard things correctly, making sure that your own assumptions, your own biases haven't crept in. So asking questions that you can understand a little bit clearer. And it can sound like, can you help me understand that a bit more? Why did you ... So there's a slight difference between paraphrasing, using their language back, and clarifying, making sure that you've understood them correctly. Okay, but there are also non-verbal cues that you can pick up on. So it's about being aware of the emotions and addressing emotions, not being scared of emotions. And also what body language that they're using. And they might even not be aware of these emotions and the body language themselves. So if you are truly actively listening and paying attention, you may pick up on things that they might not have spotted themselves. So with emotions, making sure that your report feels seen and heard, but also you're able to make sure that you understand things correctly. So it can really help you deepen relationships, to acknowledge and to name and confirm any emotions that they're feeling. And you could say this by saying something like, I'm sensing some frustration around this topic. Is that right? What's causing that frustration? So actually just naming it, but not in a not in an aggressive way, not in a shameful way, but just going, hey, this is what I'm hearing. Am I spotting it correctly? And body language as well. While it is harder when we work remotely, you can still pick up on things. You can still see facial expressions, tone of voice, any eye and head movements. Are people kind of just dazing off and a little bit kind of uninterested, or what do you see them? How do they look? Do they look lethargic, or do they look like they're excited and ready to take on the world? And picking up on that body language. And it can look like you saying, I say you're looking away in thought. What are you thinking? I think something that is really a helpful tool, I use it with coaching, is when you're talking with somebody, when you're truly listening to them rather than thinking about what to say next, when they stop, they don't necessarily stop so that you can talk. Sometimes people stop to think and reflect. So giving them that space and allowing silence so that they can properly think and reflect is really powerful as well. Okay, so we are now going to watch a demo. So we're going to observe. We've got a 2-minute video. So we have got a manager and a direct report, and this is the start of a one-to-one. It's only 2 minutes, and then afterwards, I'm going to ask you what you observed. So I'd invite you to pay attention to the body language, the tone, the expression, the phrases used. And then afterwards, I'm going to ask you to share your observations.
Hi, Sophie. How was your week? How was your week last week at the offsite? And how would you kind of rate your energy levels?
Hey, Kate. Yeah, I mean, last week was great.
Yeah.
I mean, a little bit exhausting, but in general, great. Yeah. I think my energy level is maybe, I don't know, 7. I really do love seeing everyone at the offsite, but I'm also an introvert, right? So it was tough for me, but still, it was really good. Yeah.
Okay, it's great to hear that it was positive. But I heard you say the word exhausting. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I do like seeing people. It's really important for me because I work from home most of the time. So when we're together, it's really good. But then it's like we're together all the time. And it's a lot of like small talk, which I find a little bit harder than talking, about goals, about the projects that we're doing. So yeah, for me, it was just a little bit exhausting in that sense.
I understand. And I can see you kind of frowning a little bit, playing with your hands. I kind of sense maybe a little bit of kind of nervous energy there. Is there anything that maybe I can do to kind of help with the next time we have an offsite?
Yeah, I mean, it's really important for me because I work remotely to be in that space. But I also know that I like working remotely for a reason, because I'm really productive and I don't like those like small talks and things like that. And maybe for me over lunch I can take like a nap. So I don't know if it's possible, but I just feel like when I'm in that kind of space, I feel like I'm expected to say it's so great all the time.
I think that's really, really helpful context. Because so if we're all really different, right? And we're going to get our kind of energy from different places, and that's fine. So so let's have a think about that, and maybe let's see how can we give you more space during those offsite sessions, so that maybe it's a little bit less draining for you. And how do we structure some of those sessions that you've got a little bit more energy, as opposed to maybe it taking that energy away from you. Does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. Thanks, Kate.
Great.
Okay, so we just watched that video. Who would love to come off mute and share what you observed? What did you spot about body language? Maybe about what the manager reflected, how they clarified things? Who would like to come off mute and share your reflections? Okay, Anuka, thank you.
Yeah, I can go. I mean, the one thing that stood out to me the most was at the beginning. I think it was Sophie, right? The report, like it was almost like she was trying to say something, but she was saying the opposite thing. Like there was a lot of like, it's totally okay. while there was still like a tinge of hesitation, which was almost masked. And I think the manager did a good job of like honing in on like what was masked rather than the 5 times of it was great. So
Nice.
that stood out to me.
Fabulous. Thank you for sharing. Who else would like to share? Liam, thank you.
I can jump in. I really liked that it felt like Kate was working together to come up with a solution rather than just trying to fix it herself. She really tried to understand where Sophie was coming from and then think about kind of with her how she could actually make that situation better for her rather than just like, okay, let's do this, or putting it all on her and saying, what do we need to do for you? It felt like more collaborative.
Nice. One of the things that I spotted as well was the manager, her body language as well. She leant forward. She's like, right, how can we move forward? So it felt like she was like, right, even though you're on Zoom, right, we're in this together. So that was one of the things that I noticed as well. Perfect. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. Okay, give me a +1 if you are ready to practice yourself, because we are going to go into some breakouts very soon. So give me a +1, give me a +2 if you go, oh, I really don't want to do role play, but you're going to do it anyway. And I promise you will enjoy it. It will be a good experience. Okay, we've got a 1.1, a 1 and a stress, and know that it's normal. It's normal to kind of feel a little bit apprehensive sometimes to do this role play, but you will grow from it. Actually, whenever we stretch outside our comfort zone never comes back to the same size. It stretches, it gets that little bit bigger. So if you are here going, oh, this will be a bit interesting, and maybe feeling a little bit nervous, don't worry, that is absolutely normal, but you will grow off the back of it, I promise. Okay, so we are going to be doing an active listening role play now. And during this role play, you will have an opportunity to practice your active listening in a mock kind of one-to-one meeting space. You will be able to practice, and I'd invite you to write these 4 things down if you haven't already, really thinking about paraphrasing, clarifying, addressing emotions and body language. So these are the 4 things that we really want you to practice in this active listening. The aim is not to solve the problem. So if they come with a big problem, you do not have to solve it. It's only going to be a quick role play, but it's more, can you pick up on the language? So you can have a little bit of a play as well. When you're being the employee, have a little play to go, oh, how are you going to mark the emotions or not? So we are going to give you some characters. So you will have a few minutes before we get going to look at the characters so you can choose which scenario you want to play. And then you will be one of 3 roles, and then we'll switch, and then we'll switch again. So the 3 roles are a manager. So the manager will start the conversation and they will practice that active listening. There will be a direct report who will assume their character and talk about that scenario. And there will also be an observer, and the observer's role is to watch and see what goes on so that afterwards you can give each other some feedback. And I love doing role plays like this when there are 3 people, because when you just do it with 2 people, you kind of have that back and forth, but having that impartial observer that can watch and give some feedback on this worked well, continue this, and things to go, hey, why don't you consider spotting and changing something different as well. So as the observer, you have quite a crucial role as well. There is a link in the chat which has all the scenarios, so you can download that now if you haven't got it open already, so you can have a look at the different scenarios to choose. And there will be announcements, so don't worry, you don't need to keep an eye too much on time, because we will be putting announcements throughout the chat or throughout the time to say, switch now, move to this, make sure you're doing this. So are there any questions before we get going? Any questions at all? You will have 5 minutes just to kind of read through the role play, but any questions before we get going about how this role play scenario will work? Fabulous, enjoy, and you will now be put into breakout rooms for your trios. Have fun.
Okay, Emma, how from a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling today?
I would say I'm at about a 6. I mean, I'm really excited. I know it's the first week joining, the first couple of weeks, and really excited to meet the team. Like, the project seems really great, almost like what we talked about in the interview. And everyone seems very talented in their fields and the projects seem very exciting. So I'm really, really excited about that. Yeah, of course, as you know, it's just a bit overwhelming with all the documents that I have to go through and the different templates. So Matt last week also walked me through one of the documents that we have on Notion, but it was a little bit confusing because I guess it's a little bit different from how I was working before. But I'm trying to basically adjust and balance the time so I also don't fall behind on, yeah, obviously delivering and getting things started. Yeah, but otherwise, I'm okay. I'm adjusting quite well. It's a good week.
Right. I can hear that there's a lot of things happening at the same time for you right now.
Yes, there is a lot. I think maybe it's attributed to the fact that it's onboarding time and yeah, but there's just a lot to figure out and a lot of templates to go through. So I'm struggling a little bit with those, but I feel that maybe if I take some more time this coming week, I might be able to get through.
And can you walk me a bit more through? So you mentioned you're struggling a bit right now. Can you tell me about what specifically you're struggling with?
Yeah, I feel like the templates, so the Notion pages that have been shared with me, it's just a bit hard to understand the workflows at the moment because I think the way it's organized is a little bit different. And I feel like there's a bit of pressure for me to get it all done this week. So I don't know if there is enough time. And then in addition to also knowing when to actually kick off the actual projects I'm supposed to be working on. So I think I'm just struggling with a bit of pressure and also timeline wise, how soon do I need to get through all these pages?
Right. And where is that pressure coming from?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think I'm just eager to perform and get things done. And also because I think based on the schedule they sent for onboarding, the onboarding is supposed to last like 2 to 3 weeks. And I know we're already getting to the second week. So I feel that I should be already up to speed with things. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Maybe there's something I'm just doing that I shouldn't be doing.
Right, okay. No, that's a very fair question. And I can understand that as you just recently joined, there's a lot of excitement, right? And you're feeling positively nervous about wanting to contribute, since you mentioned you've got a very great and talented team. You mentioned, about the expectation of what should be done in the first or second week. And I was curious about hearing your thoughts. What do you think you would like to do in the first 1 and 2 weeks to feel good about your progress?
Yeah, I think what would help me in this facility is just to kind of prioritize a bit to know what I actually need to get through first and what I can leave for maybe week 3, week 4, because I know there's a lot of documents to go through and maybe some of it is not super relevant for me right now. So just to understand what is the priority, what are the documents I need to go through week 1, week 2, week 3. And then what are things that can wait for a little bit so that I can also have time to actually get started with my own personal projects. So that would be all.
That's actually great.
Priority list, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually great feedback. I think we could take on board just to kind of clarify and break it down more into what can be expected to be done in week 1, week 2, and week 3 to hopefully also reduce the pressure and the stress on the new joiner. That's actually really valuable feedback. Thanks for sharing, Emma.
Yeah, awesome. That will be helpful. I feel at least a bit calmer, but yeah, I'm really excited for next week and to actually at least now have a bit more space to adjust.
That's great. Cool.
Well done. Very good for both of you. Marion, as the observer, do you want to share your thoughts?
It was very on spot. You went into character for sure. From the manager side, I noticed how you waited until the direct report finished with all her explanation and you dove deeper and you were actively listening, showing that you were interested by doing the recap or the paraphrasing and asking her again to explain further, go into detail. I also noticed how you were like this, showing your hands, you're not doing anything else with your laptop, which is a great sign. And you waited until she was finished, even though she had more to clarify and to say, but you actually gave her the space. you also kind of like coached her into getting to a solution where Angie ended up saying, maybe I need to prioritize, or I need help with prioritization, or she actually ended up giving feedback on why she feels overwhelmed and why this pressure is coming through. Well, as a manager, you also invited her to create the solution for that issue together rather than just imposing, okay, I'm gonna give you priorities. You were like, where does this pressure come from, and how can we do that together, so that in the end she became calmer. So I think it was good overall.
Thank you. I was actually curious, if that's okay. How did you feel, Angie? I know it was a role play, but how did my questions make you feel? If that's okay.
Yeah, no, of course, definitely. Definitely. I did actually feel like I was having an actual one-to-one. So one of the things that really stood out for me that I really liked was when you asked me, where is the pressure coming from? I think that also helped me, because sometimes as managers, we can gloss over said, like we just say, okay, they're having pressure, but where is the source of this pressure? And I think that question really helps to dig into, maybe you discover something about myself, that maybe I'm someone who's a perfectionist, or I'm overly critical of myself, and this is something you can work with for my future growth and one-to-ones. And if it's something that keeps happening, then it's something you can help me, navigate. So that's one thing that I remember really helped me.
Nice. Thank you for sharing this. Super helpful.
How did you find doing it?
Since it was a 5-minute role play, obviously that's not a lot of time. So I was really trying to understand what is it actually that makes her feel so overwhelmed. And this question was very spontaneous, because I was like, oh, she looks pressured, but where is this coming from? So I think it happened in the moment. And sometimes I know that I do feel the pressure of not maybe knowing what kind of questions to ask. And that can create pressure for the manager itself, right? So it was a fun exercise, definitely. And I think Angie was very open, and it felt like she trusted.
Nice. And one of the things that I would kind of share watching is you can have a list of 20 great questions, but if they're not relevant, they're not relevant. So what you said there, I loved. It's because you were listening, and truly listening, you were there going, oh, a question just popped into my head. It just felt good at that time to ask. And that is so much more effective than going, oh, which of these 20 great questions shall I ask next? Because it might just not be relevant. So I think that comes from being able to go, don't worry about the next question, just listen. And when they stop talking, ask a question. If you do find it difficult to think of the questions, one question that I love is, what else? Or tell me more. So when she's saying kind of, I'm struggling, actually could have been a great opportunity if you just go, tell me more. So you don't have to think, oh, what's the killer question? But tell me more, what else, just helps people think. But I think you did a fabulous job. I think as well, Hangvu, looking at your body language, you were nodding, you were smiling, kind of you were leaning in. So yeah, well done. Well done to both of you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got everyone coming back into the room, which is fantastic. So I would love to know, how did that go? What surprised you? Did you find it easy, hard? I would love a couple of people to come off mute and share their experiences. So who would like to go first? Liam, thank you.
Yes, I will go first. I generally hate role plays and find them really awkward. However, I think once I got into it, it felt really natural. It was really good, and I think the framework. So I was a manager in the first one, and having the kind of framework and the rubric to really think about, really helped me to actively be listening to what was being said, and then come up with better responses than perhaps I would do normally, because I was really, really focused on listening to what my report had to say, instead of thinking about all of the other fires that might be happening around me.
Nice. And how do you think that impacted how they felt, the fact that you were properly listening?
I think maybe the report can tell.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Sorry to jump in, but I was the report in both scenarios, so I had the fun job and of just probing. And I actually found having the scenarios really helpful, because at the beginning I was a little. I don't know. I knew that I'm not the actual report, but I still felt nervous for the report because I was talking about this challenge that they're having at work when they first joined. So I could really tap into that role, which was really helpful. And I think it would be harder if I was bringing something from my own work life, because I think I would be thinking too much about which one do I bring up, and person might not understand the project or whatever. So that was really helped. And also once going into it, the questions and like the probing, it was really helpful from both sides, both Akshita and Liam. And it was also interesting to see their different styles of doing similar things, but they got to it from a different angle, which was also fun to witness.
Fabulous. And I had a comment on the chat there by the observer saying it was really evident that you were actively listening as well. So love that. Well done, Liam. Okay, so before we move on to a wrap of this session, I want to really help you think about how you can put this into practice. Because it is great when we go to a session and we're all invigorated and in the moment we're like, yes, but I want you to go and do things differently off the back of it. So I want to invite you in a moment to think about how you can put this into practice with your teams. But first off, I'm going to share a few ideas of how I think you could adapt the one-to-one agenda so that it works for you. So you could maybe adapt it so that you're thinking about what's important for your team. So it may well be that talking about weekly progress on projects isn't really something that's fit for purpose for your team. Maybe there's something more important, which is about the company or team dynamics, that's worth having in there as a question. Are there any trends that are emerging from your team that you want to prioritize? Perhaps burnout is something that your team is talking about. Perhaps there's a lot of change going on that the team are mindful of. Maybe there's challenges around management. So be thinking around what are the topics that are important to you and your team that you can maybe kind of flex. You might want a specific topic about time management, for example, and you might want to have that as something that you talk about. But making sure that you have something consistent that you can use with all of your teams will really help you to help all of your teams. But also the thing that I would say is practice. Practice, practice, practice. You could rewatch this session 100 times, but actually the thing that will make the key difference is practice, which is why we spent so much of this time in role play. So maybe think about how you can test it. Rather than just rolling it out to your whole team straight away tomorrow, maybe have a willing direct report who's willing to test this with you for a couple of weeks to really build it so that it works for you, your team, and them as well. Who would like to come off mute and share with me how can you adapt this so that it really works for you and your team? What are the couple of tweaks and changes that you can make for your team? Who would like to come off mute and share?
I can go first.
Fabulous.
I think personally I struggle with, or I've overlooked, reading body language and addressing it, and that was something that I would personally want to work towards going forward. Because especially like you said earlier about like we all work hybrid, and that is one thing that will further be overlooked. So I definitely want to reflect on that.
Nice, fabulous. Thank you for sharing. Christopher.
I think also asking for the energy level is a good indicator of like, where do you actually want to go this conversation to, like from the beginning, and being like, okay, like you are energy drained, like where do you draw your energy from, and what is also draining it.
Nice. I love that, because you're actually kind of in that, you're demonstrating about clarifying, because there's one thing to go, how is your energy level? But there's another to go, what actually gives you energy, and understanding your team a bit more. So I love that. Thank you. Okay, we've got another person. Hand raised, SCT, it says.
Oh, sorry, Scott. So I think I've done these things, bits and pieces over the years, but I've never had a system. So actually having this template and having the pre-work and the conversation structure around that, I'm really excited about having all those things together at once.
Fabulous. I'm so glad. Nice. Okay, great. So there is going to be one final question before we get your feedback. And that question is, what is your commitment to yourself? So as I said before, it's great to be inspired. It's great to be energized. But what is your commitment to yourself? And I'd invite you all to put in the chat. And it's not your commitment to me. It's your commitment to yourself. You have invested this time today in this session. So what is your commitment? It could be that you're going to practice more active listening. It could be that you're going to use the template that's been provided. It could be that you're going to practice with some willing direct reports before rolling it out. It could be to have more regular one-to-ones, to listen and coach more. And so what is your commitment to yourself? And I'd love to see every single one of you put this in the chat. And oh, fabulous, I'm seeing loads come through. So being present and better active listener, to use this template instead of my boring Word document, to have more productive one-to-ones and more active listening, to paraphrase and clarify more, to have the template rolled out with my reports by the end of the month. Oh, I love that, being very, very specific. Well done. To stop trying to fix everything. Yeah, that's so important. Helping your teams to help themselves is so much more powerful than just trying to fix everything. I get more value for my team members out of the one-to-ones. I'll try to focus more on paraphrasing and clarifying points. To be a better person, a better leader. Oh, bless you. I'm sure you already are. Start with the bases to go, I already am a good person. How can I be even better? Use the templates in my weekly one-to-ones. Adapt the template for me until Wednesday end of play to discuss it with my team members on Thursday and in a one-to-one. Very, very smart objective. I've loved that. Sharing my reports that I want to active listen to their issues. Great. I love all of these commitments. So thank you. And I look forward to you going on and putting all of these into practice. So let us close by personally me saying thank you. But also we would love to get your feedback. So I think we're going to launch a poll, a survey to get some of your feedback about what you really helped you this session, what you found valuable, and how we can improve this next session even more. Thank you very much, everyone.